Okay, so welcome, Andy. We're so
Thank
excited.
you.
I have been trying since you got back to Wesleyan to put you in an official room with the students, and it's been virtually impossible between COVID and schedule and all those things. So I'm very happy to have you here.
Oh,
You
thank you.
you are our first guest of a distance class this spring. I was trying to figure it out in my head because I know it's been at least 6 years since I've taught this class. It may have been a little longer. So I'm also new coming back to auditions, and we're still in the time of COVID. But I wanted to put you first because I personally find you I find you to be a gift to the campus and
Oh,
to me. So whenever I see you walking across campus, whether you're walking your dog or you're running to or from admissions or downstairs, you're always smiling, and I generally need that smile. So
mm,
so I appreciate that. But I
thank you.
I wanted to start kind of chronologically with you, if you don't mind, and just start
Sure.
with what your experience was at Wesleyan when you graduated, what degree you got, and some maybe highs and lows and things that you think that you learned here so they could just get a sense of you at Wesleyan.
Sure. Thank you for that. That's very sweet. And I always love seeing you and all the IWU students, particularly in the School of Theater Arts. You guys are my heart, having been one of you. So let's talk about that for a minute. I got here in 1982, which doesn't seem that long ago, right, Scott? But it really is now.
Yeah.
And I graduated in 1986. There was a requirement then, and I think you still have it, where you couldn't audition as a first year student. You had to sort of, I think the theory was that you sort of let go of your habits that you developed in high school, like let the new training take, and then jump in. And when I did as a sophomore, I got cast. I got cast a lot. In fact, the very first thing that I did, I got the lead in Exit the King, and it was a powerful piece. And we did it in the lab, and it's been one of the moments that I knew I was in flow. It was one of the best experiences of my whole life. And that director and I are still in touch. And then I got cast in lots of things. And probably, if I'm really being honest, one of the things that I would say that I think you do much better now, Scott, with is you guys sort of guide and help choose which roles might be best for a student's growth overall. I tended to get cast in everything and get the leads in everything. And I think that was exciting for me at the time. But I think what it did was I was overworked. I didn't have time to absorb, perhaps some of the training that I actually was getting. It just felt, and I know that it alienated some of my colleagues that didn't get chances. And it also sort of in a way set up a false expectation of what the world would be like when I got out. So I see you guys being really careful about what I've seen you guys do. And let me just say this to you all. I've seen you guys. I come to every play. I come and I watch, and I've been very impressed by the way you've pivoted into this amazing new world of COVID. And I've been so impressed with you guys, Scott, but also with the way that the students have just embraced it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I was a music theater student. And the program was fairly new then. Maybe it had been around 5 years.
Yeah, it had. They had only had one generation of students graduate, I think, when you were
Yeah.
starting.
Okay. And so it was an exciting time. And I'm trying to think what else I could tell you. At that point, we would take voice lessons from folks in the School of Music, and so
Right.
you'd sort of had that community, as well as then you had the theater community. And one of the things that I'm really jealous of is that you guys have specific music theater vocal training. My teacher was an operatic, she was great, but she was an opera person. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but that certainly wasn't what I was going to do, and went in for that. So What else can I tell you, Scott? Ask like
Well, I was gonna
details
say,
on.
like, give me, you talked about your first piece in the lab, and I'm so glad that your special piece was in the lab. I've had Casey Erin Clark back, and her special piece was actually in the Phoenix. And I love it when it's not the main stage. Nothing
Yeah,
against the main stage in McPherson.
right.
Aside from as a director, it has the worst sight lines. It makes it very difficult for directors to do their work. But that being said, I think that sometimes the students put a hierarchy on things that's not necessarily about actually what you get out of it. And for me, I actually have had 2 experiences in the lab, and they've been 2 of my favorite experiences as a director here. So I don't put a premium on the main stage. And I've had some wonderful experiences in the Phoenix, the student theater as well. So I'm kind of glad that was your first one. But Ty, can you give me a couple more? And also, I think I would like to, while we're here talking about you at IWU and you as a Titan, and of course, once a Titan, always a Titan, that I want to talk about your friendships, because one of the things that I've admired about you from actually friending you on Facebook when I started all the social media stuff, even before you came back to us here at Wesleyan, is how tight you are with some of your classmates still to this day, from that era. And yeah, you and I are getting a little older, so there's some time there. And so I want you to talk about that a little bit.
Oh, that's great. I love talking about that. I don't know if you guys can feel this happening in your class, but what I suspect will happen for you is what happened for me. And that is that the friends that I made through my time at Wesleyan are still my very, very best friends. And we've been through the ringer together, you know, and it's just been great. And so Bill Damashki, Frank Vlasnik, Jeff Sumner, there's just so many that are having interesting, successful careers, all in sort of different ways. But we were all here together, cutting our teeth and fighting and doing stupid things, and you know, all that. Yeah. So that was great. And then all that was happening around this background of doing really good shows, you know, and getting the chances to do that. And I remember having a great experience doing A Day in Hollywood, A Night in the Ukraine. They cast it so that one half did the review part, and then one half did the Marx Brothers movie part, so that there were more people could get opportunities. And I was Harpo Marx, and that was really fun and great. I got cast in summer stock after my first year, and I did the Fantastics here. And that was fun. We did One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and I was Billy Bibbit and got a Irene Ryan nomination. At that time, Wesleyan was in the ACTF festival sort of competition stuff, and I don't think that happens now.
Yeah, they gave that up before I got back here too. I was an Irene Ryan finalist too. That was very much our era. Hey, I'm just not to stop your flow here, but can you talk a little bit, because you may be the first guest I've had back that was here during the era of summer stock at Wesleyan. And I want to say that that's what I knew about Wesleyan, because as somebody who wasn't a Wesleyan person, but is of your generation, that I was, I knew that Wesleyan was one of those summer stock options. Could you talk to me a little bit about your experience with that?
Yeah, it was interesting. It was a prestigious thing to do. They did 3 shows in the summer on the main stage. I remember being asked by Jason Dunn at that point, who was sort of maybe my version of you, Scott, if I would consider staying on for that first summer, and we did the Fantastics. And they gave us housing, and it was like ooh, my first professional job that I was paid for. Actually, I did some children's theater that I got paid for in grade school and high school, but yeah, that was really neat. And the audiences came, and it was part of a sort of an expectation that there was that happening. And what was great about that, Scott, was that when prospective students were coming to look at Wesleyan, we could tie them into coming to see one of the shows that night, at night. I did. So I ended up doing 2 seasons of that, maybe 3 actually. We did tintypes, and that was a huge one for me. I think there's actually a picture of it in the gold frame behind me there. And then I did the Nerd. I got to do that one summer. Dr. Ficca asked me to come back to do that. And Larry Shue had just died. And so it was special to get to do the lead in that. And his mother came. I remember she came to see the show and brought me a copy of the script that she had engraved, and said he knew that her son would have liked it, and it was special.
That is special. For our students who don't know, in case they don't, I'm always touting our alums, but Larry Shue is also an alum of Illinois Wesleyan and SOTA. So how special for you? Yeah, keep going.
Yeah, that really was. Other shows that I did that you guys are starting to do. It's been fun to see Wesleyan starting to do these shows again. So I did Rhinoceros, which I know you guys just did, and did a bang up production of that. I did something else that you guys did. Anyway, it'll come to me. But yeah, it was a prolific time. And there was so much going on, as there is now in the Phoenix and in the lab, and it was great.
That's awesome. Well, let's transition a little bit at post Wesleyan. So you were able to do some summer stock here and get some professional work in that way, and obviously get a lot of production work under your belt. So after graduation, what did little Andy go do, and how did he take his training, and what did he think that was useful, and what did he think was not useful?
Right. That's so great, fun to talk about. So I should say that my junior year, I did MTA auditions, and I don't know if you still have those, but you go and I sang 24 bars and did a minute of a monologue in front of a million theaters. And, then I had just a fun number of callbacks that you go and sort of do. And I ended up getting cast in Champaign at the Sunshine Dinner Playhouse, which doesn't exist anymore. And the first year I did Tommy Gillis in The Music Man, and was a waiter. It was so great because you'd have a section of the restaurant was yours, and you'd wait on them and bring them drinks, and then you'd go do the play, and at intermission you'd come out and refresh their drinks and then go back up. It was insane, but really fun.
Yeah, I miss dinner theater. I wish there were still more dinner theaters.
Oh yeah, it was a great experience. And then the next summer I went, they did Grease, and I was Duty in Grease. You guys can't imagine it, but I was so cute. I had hair. You guys, I was so different than what you're seeing now. And it feels like it was 20 minutes ago, so don't miss any of this, because this is all an important time for you. Anyway, so I should also say, Scott, that my senior year, I did an internship in New York City at an acting studio there, called the Clyde Vinson Studio for the Actor on 8th Avenue and 41st Street. I'll never forget it, right across from Port Authority. And I got to, for cleaning the bathrooms and making the coffee and turning the heat on and all this, before Clyde came, I got to take all the classes for free for a whole semester in New York and get that under my belt. And that was really cool, and really, I knew I was in the big time then. I was in the big city, and yeah, it was exciting. So now then I come back and we do the bourgeois gentilhomme. We do the would-be gentleman, and another piece. Oh, and Rhinoceros. And then I immediately graduate and get on a plane and go right back to New York. And my friends, and this is where you guys for each other were there. They were waiting for me. They, picked me up at Port Authority. I remember my plane was like 2 hours. It was 2 a.m. and my friend Jeff was there at Port Authority, not happy, but he was there to help me, get myself settled. Yeah. And I started going to auditions. And what I will tell you is, my training at Wesleyan, in terms of my approach to a song, my audition song was "I Remember" from Sondheim's Evening Primrose. I remember, Scott, and I loved it because it was an acting piece that I could put notes to, and I could go somewhere in that song. And I remember auditioning right off out of the gate, maybe my third audition for the Light Opera of Manhattan. And I did that song. And the guy was like, wow, okay, and I could tell right away it clicked with him that I wasn't just, singing. It was something happening internally. There was a journey there. And then he said, oh, and can you move? And so taught me a quick combination, and I could move. I just never was a great dancer, but I could certainly move. And they were like, wow. And that was when I was like, oh, Wesleyan really set me up good here. Yeah. And so, and I would tell you from what I'm seeing of your work, let me say this to all of you guys as you're sitting there, you guys are blowing us away. I mean, I think the prep you guys are demonstrating, I'm looking at you, Alexis, I'm looking at you, Zoe, I'm like, you guys are, your training is, I think, even more cutting edge. I think because it needs to be, quite honestly. The business has changed so much. But yeah, I was able to be recognized for some abilities that were definitely honed here at Wesleyan. Yeah, so I got that, and I got in a children's theater, got my equity card there in New York. And that was huge because auditions in New York were just at that time, Scott, and you were there too, right? I mean, you were
a little later, I think a little later than you guys, but yes,
you were younger. Yeah. At that point, Scott, it was that you couldn't, if you weren't equity, you had to wait in line to audition for Big River, say, which was new, or any of these Broadway shows that you guys probably think are quaint and old. I was there when they were being cast, so it was wild. But you'd have to stand in the long line outside, and if they had time, they'd take non-equity in. But it was brutal.
This is true. They will, but it's just the line's much longer now than it was for us.
Oh,
the line's even longer now. I have to get
really. So they still do that then?
They still do see non-equity after equity, but I will tell you that many a time our kids are in line at 4:30 in the morning, and they're still there at 2 in the afternoon, only to be told, "Hey, we don't have time for non-equity."
Yes, and that happened all the time in the 80s too. Yeah, that was a good time, and a time to really find out what you're made of, and what you want. How much do you want it? How much are you going to go for it? Yeah. So what else can I tell you about
I know
that
you did some touring. I know that you got some national tours, and I think that's of interest to the students to hear a little bit about your touring experience. And I guess the next natural place for me, knowing as little as I do about you, is your decision to go from being primarily a theater actor and doing theater and music theater and all kinds of theater, and then deciding to go to the West Coast.
Right. Yeah. So what did you start with this? I'm so sorry. You started by
I asked about your national tours.
Oh, my national tours, right. So here's the thing, you guys. If you don't remember anything else I ever say today, here's one thing I would love you to take away. Be nice to everyone, because you never know who is going to be whatever. And so when I did work at the Sunshine Dinner Playhouse in Champaign-Urbana, where I was serving people Shapoopy Potion, the specialty drink for $8, and they got to keep the glass. Then that director ends up in New York, and he's casting a national tour of Sweet Charity. And he remembered me and called me in, and I got it. I got Oscar, which is like one of the greatest parts ever, with that elevator scene. If you're any of my guys in here, or if you're a nervous guy, have that sort of energy, that's your gold right there. Go to that. Yeah, so I got that. and it went really well. We were on a bus and Scott, you were like Debbie Booning it with Rolf, right? You were
I did with Marie Osmond, but Debbie Boone did do it before me.
Okay.
Yeah. So yes, I've done the bus and truck. I've done the Nice tour, the Broadway contract where they fly you everywhere too. So yeah, I love touring. I'm a big tour.
Yeah, it was a great way to see the city, the country, and spend time in cities. You did much higher end stuff than I did. So we did that, and then a season went by, and the same company was putting out Pippin, and they called me up and said, actually, he offered me Pippin, and so same director, and so I did Pippin for that second tour, and I think yeah, that was a powerful time, and I was equity at that point, and so it was fun. And just have great memories of that time. My family being at all the stops, and we were all at every stop in Florida, I mean, all the cities in our nation in some ways, not all the cities, obviously.
That was my favorite thing about touring too. It was seeing our country, but also my family and friends who never got to see me perform.
Yes.
Always in New York or in some big city.
Yes.
When you suddenly play their town or near their town, I think the last time my older brother saw me ever on stage was The Sound of Music, and that's been a long time. So, hey, so then how did you go from this and all this theater work,
right,
finding that you really wanted to explore film and television?
So I did, there was a show, Scott, that was new, had just had a Broadway run called Eastern Standard. Which is a great, interesting play by Richard Greenberg. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. You should read it. It's a really good play.
And Annette Bening was in the original, right? Was
she? I can't remember now. She might have been.
Yes, this was a hot play in our era.
Peter Frechette
y'all know Richard Greenberg. Y'all usually know him because of 3 Days of Rain, but you should know him for Eastern Standard. Keep going.
Yeah. And they were doing its West Coast premiere. So they auditioned in New York, and I got it. And they flew me out, and I was doing this show in LA. And immediately, I'm 5 years in New York at this point, and I've done work in the Poconos and done all that good stuff. And I go to LA, and I'm doing this really quite good part in this, and all of a sudden I'm realizing like people are coming to see it. And I realized this was much furthering my career in LA than I had done in anything else in New York. And so I thought, why would I leave now? So I ended up staying after the show was over. And I will also say my standard of living went up like 3,000% in a day when I moved to LA, because I could, all of a sudden there was sky, and you could go to a grocery store that had food in it. And I think New York is very different now. But it was a little bit like, you were taking your life in your hands at certain points.
Yeah, I will say the New York that you were in and that I first moved to,
a
very different place than it is today.
Yes.
Yeah. Like there were no grocery stores. Now there are grocery stores everywhere. There are Target.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's how I got there. And then my thing was, you guys, I kept, one of the other things that Wesleyan did so well for me was the liberal arts part of this school. And so the fact that I could conjugate a verb and write it down, and I knew something about chemistry, and because I knew about history, and I just found many things interesting. What happened in New York was I'd sign up to be go to a temp agency, and they would send me to various jobs. And ultimately the job would say, oh, do you want to stay on past this? We would hire you. And I'd be like, no, I'm an actor. And then I'd go, and, so I was able to keep a foot in two worlds and keep a roof over my head. I never had to ask my parents for money. I never did any of that, because I knew that, I tried to be a pleasurable person to be around in a workspace. But secondly, I was competent, and I also wasn't afraid to ask a question if I didn't know something. But that put me in really good stead. So that's another, you guys made a great choice to come to Wesleyan for that reason. Just the fact that you're gonna know all these things that you don't even know when people talk about it, because you'll have a context that many other people don't have when they get to New York. And it makes you a better actor too, for that matter, if you understand, what the context of a play is, even when it was written and all that, and why it was written. What else, Scott? I'm rambling.
So talk about you. So go from Eastern Standard and doing theater on the West Coast, which is its own thing, because I've done a little theater on the West Coast too, and it's very different than doing theater on the East Coast and the rest of the world, because it's definitely a film television realm, and that is king out there. And then transitioning, because I can remember when you first, and we'll get to when you came back to Wesleyan, but I was still watching you on serial television, doing guest spots, on some of these TV shows, as you were actually transitioning to Wesleyan again. So talk to me a little bit about how you kind of got into that world, because you certainly didn't train for television and film while you were here.
That's true. There was an acting for the camera course here then, and it was not good. We were all out of our depth, and so was the teacher, faculty member, and it was not good. And I would tell you that my television and film work suffers to this day, because I didn't get to be friends with it when I was your age. So please, you don't know where you're going to go. Make friends with a camera. Don't be afraid of it. So
the best thing about COVID is they have to make friends with the camera.
Yes, I was going to say that
now.
The silver lining of this is you guys are actually. I watched, Mary Jane, and I watched Chess, and all the stuff that you've done. You guys are filming the way a traditional sitcom is filmed, where there's an audience, but you're actually also being filmed, and you have to find the balance of playing to the folks in the room, but also know a camera sort of up your nose. Very cool. So embrace that, learn from it. So I always knew I was a character actor. Scott, you were more handsome. I was always playing, I was playing Mr. Kolenkov in high school. I was Mr. Von Don up in the, in the Anne Frank attic when I was 18, whatever, not even 18, like 13. So I knew that as I got a little bit older, I thought film and TV and commercials would be a thing that I could explore. And sure enough, as my hairline began to recede, and I did, I started to meet casting directors in the film and television world. And, they were looking for people that could do something quickly. So what happens in episodic TV, and this is probably changing too, Scott, and this is even in 3 years, the world has changed so much, but an episode, the writers are writing an episode and the casting director's waiting for them to finish it. And the writers are like, I don't have it finished. And so they often, the casting director has, 24, 48 hours to find somebody to do these parts. And so there were these workshops in LA that you could sort of sign up and pay to go and audition for casting directors. And they would give you the sides, and you would go and do it one night, for $25 it was. I think those have since been deemed illegal.
Well, I think actually they've gotten to be kind of there are legitimate ones and there are illegitimate ones. So I would say the Actors Connection in New York and in LA is all about this. This is what they do. It's kind of an above board pay to play, but it's the same thing where you'll go in there and they'll give you a class, but then they're guaranteeing that you'll be seen.
Yes, that's exactly right. And I resisted this for a long time. I thought, I'm not going to do that. I'm an actor. I'm not going to pay. And the second I did it, my life changed. I immediately got Angel, and I got Gilmore Girls, and like in a week, because they saw that I could, I came with enough training that all they had to do was sort of, here's the lines, here's the style of the show, go. And so that was where my career really kind of in television began. And then it, you know, became this idea of like, could I parlay that into anything bigger? Could I get it into a recurring role? Or, you know, I was doing under fives. One of the fun ways that I knew I was doing okay was one of the earlier things I did, Scott, was I was an extra in an Adam Sandler movie called Little Nicky. And it was a evening shoot. We were shooting from, God, 10 p.m. to like 4 a.m. in this big park in Pasadena. And it was cold and it was miserable and we couldn't feel our feet and we were running towards fire. It was all like, you know, pretending to be things that are happening with no proper gear. And by the next year, the next Adam Sandler movie, I had a role and I had a trailer and I was like, wow, it's been a great year. I you know, was treated like cattle and now I have a trailer and those poor people are the cattle now. And I always felt so bad for them and I always advocated for my fellow, you know, underlings. And I invite you to consider doing those sort of things as well. Just for the good feeling it brings. So that was it. And I just started to get stuff and this is a funny thing about Mr. Deeds. And then I see, Scott, you're ready to take me somewhere else. But I knew I went into audition and the line was something like, you know, I've always wanted to be a magician. And I made this hand gesture that you're seeing me gesture wildly in my little box now. I can't stop. It's terrible. You guys always don't do too much with your hands. Let me just say that. It will haunt you if you do. But I did this and when I saw the movie, they put a sound effect to that, like goes, whoo, and I was like, oh wow, that's really cool. And then I also saw that I was dubbed in Spanish on HBO when it was showing on HBO in the Spanish speaking HBO, and to see myself dubbed, and then whoo, I was like, oh, that's really good. That's really good. So anyway, that's just a moment.
Well, I was gonna say, because so you had this career going and you were living your life and you were, you know,
Yeah.
and I think it's important that our students understand that it is a life in the arts. So it's
Oh.
not all just that. You're also, you know, have, you know, things happening with family and friends and relationships.
Yes.
And so part of it is that too. But I wanted to say, so this is rolling along and you're having a career and you're living in, you know, California. Where was the turn to thinking that you maybe wanted to come back to Wesleyan and help us kind of right the ship here? Because we were certainly in a bit of a crisis when you came.
Let me just start by saying what you just said. That's another thing I want you to remember more than anything else is have a good life. Don't pursue this to the exclusion of being happy and having love and being a good person and reading books and, you know, I mean, just like it's so important to have a whole life and have this be a part of it, and that would be something I would say. So I'm glad that's a tenet of yours, Scott. I'm not surprised that it is, but I really subscribe to that as well. One of the things that as you get older, at least for me, is that I also started to find ways that I knew I wanted to make a more steady income. And so I had a friend who said, oh, this nonprofit in LA that's bringing school health programs to LA Unified School Districts, they need a communications guy. And I thought, well, I'll throw my hat in the ring, and I got it. And what it taught me was how to tell a story in a new way, short writing for advertising, for social media. I started to develop skills around communications and marketing. for a cause that I really deeply believed in. And so that was also so I had meaning there. Let me say that. So it's about finding meaning. And so obviously the arts gave me meaning and performing gave me meaning, but also then this piece gave me meaning. And I was able to find a way to make auditioning happen, even that. And so I said to the executive director, I love this job and I want to do it. Occasionally I do get called in for things, and I had an agent, obviously my agent was calling, and when that happens, if I can go, I would love to take this job. And they liked me and believed in me enough that I would do the work. I would get it done. There's something about your ethic, right? So that I had this ethic that even if I had to leave between 8, 9, and 5, I'd get it done another, so they'd still have what they needed. And they were then they became my fans, and they became my champions. And so when I'd get something, like I got Heart of Dixie while I was at this other job, and they were like, oh my gosh. And so then they organized a viewing party, and you just keep increasing your fan base of your people that want you to do well. And so I would say this too: don't ever go into a job and say, oh, I can't take it because of X. Make them love you, show how great you are in a certain way, and then they'll work with you. I 9 times out of 10, I suspect they'll find a way to help you reach your goals. In a survival job, that was my thing. I was a tour guide at Warner Brothers for many years, and I love the history of our business. And one of the things I love that Scott is teaching you guys is I can tell he's wanting you to know your history and wanting to know your history of music theater, and know, my friend Frank, who's now working on this Bob Mackie book, which you'll see, he's a walking encyclopedia, as we all kind of were. I mean, I don't compete with him because he knows everyone from, and I know a lot of them too, but know your history. And that's so cool. So then I was this tour guide, and I was, I would be telling, like, here's where Casablanca was filmed, and what I'd ask on the tour, what are you guys interested in? And someone would say, oh, I love John Wayne movies. And that was the cool thing about the Warner Brothers tour, because you were just 14 of you on a little tram, and I was the driver. So I could say, oh, you like John Wayne? Let's go over here. And I'd say, this is where he's filmed his last movie. And I would get choked up because they would get choked up. It was just crazy. But I love the art, and in all the forms. So yeah.
I think that's awesome. I mean, I think the whole reason it's really important for us to talk to people who are at every point in their career is to be able to say how exciting it is. And the one thing I will say for us old guys, Andy, is that we've had a life. And so we've had lots of ups and we've had lots of downs. What are some of the things that you wish you had known, or you wish had been said to you when you were 18 to 22? Not that you would have heard it, because there are lots of things that I think were said to me that I just didn't hear or wasn't ready to hear.
Totally agree.
And sometimes the folly of youth is what gives us a career. Sometimes our kind of inability to be afraid is the reason we get a job.
So true.
Because we do get a little more scared as we get older and know. But the thing is, I would say, what are some of the things that you wish you'd heard?
Invest your money, save your money, get a 401k, do it now, learn the magic of accruing interest. Do you know that be nice to everybody thing? I approached my life and my career in a way that I'm always pushing against an edge that I was taught and that I'm trying to forget. And that is, I have to keep reminding myself that it's okay to take up the space I take up. I'm always rushing. I'm afraid if it goes too long, I'm talking too much. I wish someone had said to me, in fact, somebody did say this to me, just be, you're enough. You are enough. And I would say to you guys, you're enough. You don't have to gild it, the lily. Don't do that. Figure out who you are. Be that simply as you can. And you will start to emerge. And That's what I would say. It's so much simpler than I was able to make it in my youth, but I had all this energy. So that sort of got me
the perfect
through.
first guest. See what he's the perfect first guest. It is so important. I think that's such a great thing, and I think that is something our generation was not taught. We were taught, or at least I was taught. I don't want to speak for you. That the harder you work, the better it's going to go. So I still to this day can outwork anybody, but all I really end up often being is exhausted. It doesn't necessarily
so true, Scott.
Have the result that I want it to have. And as we all know, people don't notice hard work all the time. So you can't wait for that pat on the back. It's not going to come. So I do think it's important that that the students, and I just want to reiterate this for you guys, that you hear that it's okay to take up space. It's okay to be you. The thing that nobody can replicate is you, and you being a second-rate somebody else is not gonna make it happen.
So true. And along those lines, this was certainly film and TV, and I have to say I haven't auditioned really for theater for so long. It may still apply. Don't do what you think they want. Don't try to be that. Get your own hit from what you've read and taking in, and do that. Often they don't know what they want. They think they want it to be this way. I can tell you a story. I got cast in a show called The Middle, and I did the pilot of it. And the description was like, oh, it said, he's a choir director, a swing choir director with too much makeup is what the description was. And I was like, oh, I don't like that. I just decided I was going to make him just think that his choir was everything and the best thing. And I didn't want to go. I knew they were telling me that he's effeminate was where they were going. I didn't do that. I just was like, I so believed in it. And honestly, they fell on the floor with the way I did it. And they're like, that's it. There's more to that story, but yeah. So that's a good example. Like, don't judge, don't go to the next like obvious conclusion by what you read in the description, in the breakdown.
I'm gonna open it up to them in just a few more minutes.
Yeah.
But first, I want to know, who are some people? Give me just a couple of people that you think really helped you in your journey, that were the right people, the right time, that you were able to hear what they said, or that gave you that leg up or that hit up. And also, could you please tell us one big failure?
Oh,
because I think that sometimes what we do is we only highlight the good, and they don't realize there's a lot of bad that goes with that good, but that's the journey, right? God. That's the journey.
Yep. Oh, this is great. I could let's start with the failure. I remember do you guys have to do voice juries? Do you guys sing?
Theater majors have to do a jury. If the BFA actors are a Jennings scholar, they have to do voice juries because they're taking their voice lessons in the School of Music like you did.
Oh, okay. It wasn't even a jury. It was like they had a Tuesday thing where you'd go and it was rep, and all the students would, from all the faculty members would come and sing, and a recital. And I cracked so bad. I cracked enough that I heard a gasp from my friends out in front, and it was in Westbrook Auditorium. I still have never gotten over it, and it's actually changed that I'm still like, I'm still a little worried when I sing to this day. Now, of course, I did national tours and did all this stuff, but I'm telling you that fear still stayed. I did a show. I did a show called Strong Medicine, and it went so well, my initial thing, that they started to spin it to write to me and Phil Kasnoff, who was he played the lead in Chess back in the day, Scott, when we were there. Yeah, he was
the Broadway Freddie. Yeah.
He was, and he and I just had this great chemistry. He was a hospital administrator and I was this sort of nervous guy typing, doing HR, and we were funny together. And they said, and they brought me back and the director didn't like me. something, and he like kept making me go back, and I was just, I failed and I didn't get it, and they never brought me back to do it again. And it was like this, it was like, oh wow. And I remember thinking, I lost this. I had it and I lost it because of something that I couldn't really control. Yeah, I've got tons of failures. And we can go to lunch. We can have every failure you want.
Give us some successes. Give us some people that gave you some great advice or a leg up or a hand.
Yeah, certain casting directors that believed in me. Here's another thing. I was the oldest living orderly on General Hospital for about 8 years. So Gwen Hillier is one of the people I would say. She was in the chorus of No No Nanette on Broadway, if you can believe that. And she ends up in casting. And my God, twice a month she'd bring me in to on General Hospital, and I would like be wheeling, Anna Lee, in a wheelchair, the nurse or the nun from Sound of Music, like she was now ancient and she couldn't get out of her jazzy power chair, but I was wheeling her through the hospital. Very cool, fun stuff. Some folks at Disney really liked me and believed in me and would bring me in for stuff. Directors that helped me go deeper than I thought I could. I have a feeling, Scott, you would have been one of those directors for me. I would have given myself.
You're too kind.
No, I've seen what you do. Yeah, so lots of people, but no one that's jumping out so much.
That's good. I just wanted them to know, because I think that sometimes, particularly when you're young, it's overwhelming to think that it's your own sheer will that's going to get you there.
Totally.
Yes, you have to have tenacity of purpose, and yes, you've got to go for it with everything you have. But there are so many people around you that if you are open, are willing to lift you up. I'm the same way. I really am sad that in New York they don't have as many daytime television as they used to, because I spent a lot of time on As the World Turns. You brought up Phil Kasanoff. I mean, I read with him for Oz. I didn't get that role. A friend of mine actually got it, but I was this close to being, molested by him in a prison. So I mean, I think that there's so many stories, and the truth is, whenever I have someone like you come and talk, a bunch of them come back to me. Like, I've even forgotten, because there's so many stories along my way and my journey, and I tend to tell the same 5 over and over again.
Right, right.
It's good that you're bringing that up. Let's open this up a little bit. I'm going to go from speaker view for me to gallery view, so I could see people. I see that, of course, Alexis has her hand already.
I love that.
Alexis, what do you have for Andy?
Hi, Andy.
Hi.
So you mentioned that the last time you did film or audition for film was 3 years ago.
Right.
Do you think with this new medium becoming like the norm, you'll start to audition for film again?
You know what? I haven't ruled it out. Thank you for asking that. I realize, there's that other great thing that happens the second you give it up, and even though I didn't tell myself it's forever to come back here to do this job, you start to have all this freedom. Like, I was like, oh, I'm a better actor now because I'm not an actor. If you can detach, here's a great one too. If you can detach from the result of trying to get it or do something, you all of a sudden will have all this freedom. And so thank you. What I do think is, I hope I come back to it. I hope, the authority that I'm finding as a director of marketing for Wesleyan, I'm looking forward to putting that into the acting world as well, and sort of, leaning into that.
Like last year, you did that trio show, that Christmas show.
Yeah,
I know
right.
Angie and I promoted y'all on social media.
Thank you.
A couple of alums in there.
Yeah.
And now we have, a nephew of one of those cast members in our program. So I'm glad to hear that you're letting them know that you are continuing, and I hope you do, in a lot of ways, because I think, our life takes many journeys and like twists and turns, but it doesn't mean that anything is necessarily over.
I love that. And that's it. So, who knows? And that's a good thing about film and television. I mean, the older I get, the more myself I get. I can remember one time a casting director said to me when I was young, he's like, I don't know, I can't get you. I don't know who you are. And then a few years later, I had another casting director say to me, I know who you are. I got you. You are the guy at the airport that has a head in his bag. You look normal. And I was like, okay, that's great. Yes, I'll be that guy. Just give me a bag. I can make the head. So I was like, great.
It's funny, Eddie. You were being very, very gracious to me about my younger appearance was much better than my middle-aged appearance. But I will say I had the opposite problem that you had. I was turning 30, and I was the oldest Rolf. On R&H's books.
Oh.
Like, I had to play that sappy, I'm in love, I'm in love, I'm in love. I was so sick of being in love.
Right.
And I was wanting to play those character actors. So I was busting my tail to regional directors to let me play Nathan Detroit and Guys and Dolls because I wanted to be a character actor. So I'm excited that as I get older, I think I'm settling into my character period.
Yes. Yes.
Who's got another question for Andy? Okay, Pearly.
Hi, Pearly.
Hi, Andy. Nice to meet you.
Nice
I'm
to meet
Pearly.
you.
I'm an acting major and a senior.
Yes.
So I've noticed, I remember you mentioned that you thought that as you got older, you would fit more into you'd have more success in the film. And I think I'm the same way because I'm always cast as the older woman, the crazy aunt that comes in the wedding dress in My Favorite Year, the mom that yells at you.
Right.
That's the things I'm typically cast as.
Right.
So my question was, I want to know what do I do in the meantime? Because I'm probably not going to be able to get those until I'm 40 or however old.
Mm-hmm. That's great. That's great. Well, the first thing you do is know this is a long game. Don't play the short game, right? So, and do play the short game too. So here's the thing: get as much experience and relaxed in front of the camera. Write. Find other, and believe me, there's a million people that would love to put you as the old lady in the dress coming in. I mean, you can get cast at that tomorrow too. And it's especially these regional theater auditions, over summer stock, get all the experience you can. And as your body and your face catch up to your type, all of a sudden you're going to start to go, oh, wow, you're going to start to see, this is my prediction. You'll start booking things more and more, and you'll be ready for it. I don't know if that was a good answer, but
I think it was a great answer. I would also, I'm going to throw in there, Pearly, since he brought it up, something that I've said to a lot of people. Y'all know that I resist telling you who you are because I think that can throw you in. If you're going to put yourself in a box, that's on you. I'm not going to be the one to do it. But I will say this for people who are, I hate terms like quirky. So anyway, I'm not going to use adjectives because I don't like any of them. But for people that fall into those things, specifically for people in this bubble, this small bubble, or in this bubble of high school who fall into these character roles, these older roles, I will say this: when people say, well, when you're 40, you'll have a career. It's not true. Let me tell you about non-equity national tours and equity national tours. People who are in their 40s have children and husbands and wives and both. And the thing is, and they don't want to go on a tour. And so they do need to cast somebody who's 26 who can play 55, because that 55-year-old is not a life space
to know
work. So there's always work out there. There's always work, however you fit in. You just have to be tenacious enough to go after it, and not
agree.
Not give up. Okay, I think Zoe had her hand up.
Thank you.
Hi, Zoe.
Hi.
Hi.
I was curious your thoughts on some casting directors are suggesting now that you go to places like Chicago or Georgia where there's a budding film scene before moving to LA. What are your thoughts on that? Does it matter?
That's a great question. I think there's wisdom in that. I think I think your heart sort of will tell you. I think your you know, it's about getting experience, right? So if you can, wherever that can happen. And the good thing that I feel like it's happening now with the world, certainly for Zoom, is that you can audition for anything really from anywhere. It used to be that you had to be there, you know, and now you don't so much. I chose to go to LA and to New York right off the bat. I'm not convinced necessarily that's the right way for everyone anymore. I skipped Chicago, and Chicago's got one of the greatest theater scenes in the nation. I regret that in some ways. To me, it feels like this dark hole that I don't quite understand. I understand the theater world in LA better than I did in Chicago, and certainly in New York back in the day, I knew it. That's a terrible answer. I'm sorry.
Let me jump in. Let me give you an assist a little bit.
Yes, please.
Because we haven't had any of these conversations yet, so they'll clearly get my opinion. But I will say, for me, it is about you can't go to a city to think that it's a stepping stone. These major markets, whether it's New York or LA or Chicago, and those are our major big markets, they all have a personality unto themselves. So you have to find out, but to spend years, getting to know casting directors, getting to know people, building relationships, understanding the nature of that city, understanding the nature of yourself within that environment, to just leave it to go to another one is not necessarily always the best way to go about this. Sometimes there is wisdom in saying, I'm choosing this thing because that's what I want to do. For my generation, you needed to be in New York or LA. And Chicago was kind of an option, but really you needed to be in New York and LA. If you were in Chicago, you were flying to New York or LA. Andy's very right in the fact that now so much of this you have to, before COVID even, it's all self-tapes. So you can literally be anywhere. But I will say, I think what y'all have to do is really explore, like, where do I want to be? Where do I see myself? Because all of these places have a scene, a very vibrant scene. And there are also secondary and tertiary markets that have their pluses and minuses. You've got to figure out, do I need to be a big fish or can I be a small fish? Will I lose my tenacity if I'm a small fish for too long? What is it that you want? And also you've got to be willing to say, you know what, this isn't working. I came to New York and it's not working, or I went to Chicago and it's not working, or I went to LA and it's not working, and I'm going to make a new choice. And that doesn't mean you're a failure. So I think there's lots of ways to get there, but I will say Chicago is easy access for this community because so many of you are Illinois centric. But my only rule of thumb about what you do post-graduation is don't go home and give it at least as long as you did college. So if you're going to go somewhere, give it at least 4 years, because it took you that long to become the king of the castle here. It's going to take you that long to get on your feet there. Moving's stressful and being in a new place is overwhelming. Anyway, who else had their hand up? Mike Justice.
Sorry, I was writing.
Hi, Mike.
Hello. I just wanted to ask, so I know you touched on it a little bit, but when you were leaving Wesleyan, what was one thing you noticed you and most of your peers sort of seemed to be in general struggling with in kind of coming onto that scene that, like, you as a whole group noticed maybe was a struggle?
Struggling. That's interesting. We struggled with everything. No, I guess I would say at that point, Illinois Wesleyan didn't have the national reputation that it has now. Boy, I'm coming up kind of blank. Struggling to get jobs in terms of even survival jobs was interesting. But I know you mean, like, in terms of the acting career, don't you, Mike?
Well, I mean both. I mean, the struggling to find the side jobs is also something I was wondering about too. So
yeah. And that's the other piece where this friendship network came in. So it was like my friend, Jeff Sonner was like, oh, they're taking, you can go be call about margarine, which do they like, A or B better, and they'll pay you $100 for the day, that whole thing. yeah, I think it was just about how to break in and be yourself, but I don't know. Scott, help me out. I don't know what.
No,
I
I
don't
was
know.
going to say, no, you don't need help. But I will say that y'all had some distinct advantages that I actually like and I'm envious of. Because so many of you did that semester, like with Bender Casting, or you did your semester with the theater,
Right.
which we've struggled to build those relationships now because there's such a flooded market for those and fewer of those kinds of relationships.
Right.
For programs. So I think that was an advantage y'all had. I think that another advantage y'all had was that you were such a small alumni base that you really did know each other. I mean, like, it wasn't a
Right.
matter of like, now we have multi-generations. So like, while
Right.
all these kids know who you are and Bill is, and Frank's been back to visit, and Jeff, is on our social media a lot. It's a little, there's a bigger distance to them calling you up and saying, hey, I went to Wesleyan. And so versus going to school, I think that what I've noticed from having a bunch of you back, and also from living through this myself, and now I can't believe I've been here for 14 years, graduating all these kids to go out there, is that there's some things that just don't change. And the thing that doesn't change is that it is a bit of a hustle and it's a big transition, and you need your friends. That doesn't change. That was the same for Andy and me as it is for you guys. So if you think you can do it all on your own, you're wrong. But you get by with the help of your friends. But there are people out there, and I will tell you, we are so fortunate that for whatever reason attracted you to come to Illinois Wesleyan in the middle of the cornfields, it attracted generations of the same kind of person. So they really will pick up the phone. It doesn't matter if they have an Oscar nomination, they'll pick up the phone and go, oh, you're from Wesleyan? I can tell you right now that Dick Jenkins will take a phone call from you faster than he will from me. I mean, he will take my phone call, but only because he knows I'm here in service of you. And the truth is, if I were just Scott Susong who went to school in Texas, he'd be like, I don't know you. But the fact that he went to the dorms, he met his wife, he did summer stuff, that he tread the same boards that you did and had the same experiences, they're so willing to help you. Anyway, who else? I know we had more hands, more questions. Julie. Hi,
Julie.
my bifocals are so hard with Zoom. Sorry.
Hi, Julie.
Hi, thank you so much for being here and talking to us.
I love it. And can I just tell you how much I enjoyed you in the lab production?
Miss Julie.
Miss Julie.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh, very good.
Thank you. My question is, how did you, when you weren't cast and when you didn't have acting jobs, how did you keep yourself in a creative zone and keep yourself involved in the work when you weren't, working professionally?
Yeah. Well, for one thing, I took class. I always was in class. I studied with acting teachers. I studied with, we made Artist's Way groups. I don't know if you guys know the Artist's Way. Really interesting book that you guys should read about. It's a self course that you can take by through it, and chapters that you do on your own and sort of get you in touch with your creativity.
Oh, they're going to get introduced to Julie and Cameron this.
Yes. Okay.
Absolutely.
Good. I studied with a student of hers that took us through that. I went to plays. Oh, you know what? So great, Julie. I in New York, I would go to a play. I'd go to the half price booth every night that I could. And 10 minutes before, and I'd go see, Sunday in the Park, and The Circle with, Glynis Johns. I mean, every theater piece I could go to see, I saw. I love to read. And writing, if you guys are probably journaling, back in our day, they didn't really tell you to journal. That all came with Oprah and you guys. But journaling is a great way to stay creative in your mind, I think, and come up with fun stuff. That's kind of what I would say. Put on plays in your house. That's this Jeff Sumner that we're talking about. If you can follow him on social media, he is doing the same thing now that he did at Kemp Hall. when I was there in 1984. And that was, he'd put on a wig and a bathrobe, and he would become a character, and he would hold us wrapped. I mean, we would just watch. He was just insane. It was hilarious. And now he's turned it into, you know, kind of what he's doing. It's shameless, but he is funny and talented at it. So
yeah, Jeff is highly entertaining. Yes. Okay, I think the next, we've got a time for a couple more quick ones. I think Angie and then Justine. Oh, Angie says no. She was just waving at me.
Oh.
Justine.
Hi, I have a question.
Where are you, Justine?
I'm right here.
Oh, I love you. Yeah, I know.
I know you gave me a few time steps back in the day.
Back in the day, I remember you and your mom.
Yeah,
in the lobby.
You
I love you,
Justine.
Justine. You know what? I never got to see you, but I got to tell you how you were so strong in King Charles. I was like, whoa.
King Charles.
I mean, you were like holding it.
You were so
holding
quiet
the
and so forceful walking around.
You were grounded. It was very powerful. And by the way, Kieran, off the charts in that too. Okay, Justine, please go ahead.
My question is, if you could go back and talk to yourself after you had just graduated, what's a piece of advice that you would give yourself that you didn't know then, but now you know? What did you wish you knew?
I wished I knew that somehow it was all going to be okay. Whether the outcome of a particular gig or show, or, like ultimately it does fade. The disappointments fade. What matters to me, and this is where I think Scott is, and I'm saying, live a life, have a life, be kind, give people the right of way, let people cut in front of you in the store, that kind of stuff. I was so needing something that I don't quite feel like I need so much anymore. Here's the other thing that I had a teacher tell me. She went around and it was a commercial class. We were doing commercials, and she gave everyone sort of a mantra. And she said to me, she was like, you need to do this, you this. And she goes to me and she goes, you're good at half. I was like, wow. And she was exactly right. I found her very irritating, but she was very right. And she was like, you're good at half. And so I get what that means for me. And I still think of her. If I just do my simple thing, it's much stronger than if I think I got to show the work I did to get there, because I thought showing the work made me seem like a good student. But the truth is, no one in acting really wants to see your work, and they just want to see you be. And
we say that acting is not math. You don't have to show your work. You just have to show the answer.
Oh, see, if I'd known that, that's okay. That's my best answer, Justine. Don't show your work, and you don't. I watched you. You were like effortless. So yeah, that's to me the best. I would have a much bigger career if I'd had that. I think.
I will also say I love what you said, Andy, about my most irritating teachers, the casting director that hurt my feelings the most, the director that made me feel the smallest, actually had probably the most profound positive impacts on me. I just wasn't always ready for that lesson or that word or that moment. But in looking back, they were some of the more transformative things. Not people that were cruel, and we came up in a pretty cruel environment that hopefully is a little better now. But I will say, for the people that just were doing their job, but I wasn't ready to hear it. And that's a lot of teachers. I've apologized to a lot of teachers during my teaching career for what I put them through as a young person. Okay, so we are doing okay. This class is, well, actually, I think, are we at time?
Oh.
Time. Can you believe the time went so quickly?
I want to come back.
So I really, really want to thank you, Andy, so much.
Oh.
Please don't be a stranger with Andy. Once we don't have to socially distance, please go up to him. Until now, stay 6 feet apart, keep your mask on, but still, he's around, he's there. And I will say he's one of the first people to recognize our efforts in our social media stuff. So I know that myself and Angie and Megan really appreciate those likes, and he really does keep an eye on you guys and applauds you, and really is everything we could ever want in an alum and a friend. So thank you so much for being our first guest to our auditions class this spring.
I loved it. I feel like I didn't even scratch the surface of what I want to tell you, but that's good.
We'll come around. We'll have you back again. Everybody unmute for a second and let's applaud him.
Oh.
Yay! Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys.
And Andy, we'll talk again soon. Thank you, everybody.
Take care, everybody.
Bye. We'll see. Oh.